I disagreed with so much that the bank was doing. We did clash, and it did end up making me really quite ill. Then the financial crisis hit in 2008-9. The world was turned upside down.
Hello listeners, and welcome back to another episode of the Directors Club podcast, brought to you by Cumbria Chamber of Commerce. Now in this series we get to explore some of the most interesting characters, directors and leaders from Cumbria, and on occasion beyond. The Directors Club is kindly sponsored by Rachael Bell Wealth Management and Muckle LLP. Today I'm here with Rachael Bell of Rachael Bell Wealth Management. And of course, other than being one of our sponsors, Rachael and her team are active members and active parts of the Cumbrian business community. Rachael is really honest with us in this podcast, really vulnerable and very insightful. Do listen to the end because she gives so much information on her journey, where she started, where she's ended up, and what her vision is for the future. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Hi Rachael, welcome to the Directors Club podcast.
Hi Eve, thank you.
So can you start by telling me a little bit about your background and where you're from?
Oh, crikey. Okay, my background, I'm a Yorkshire lass originally, although I think I've just about got my Cumbrian passport now, because I moved up to Cumbria when I was 13. My parents bought a pub up in Alston, and I was a landlady's daughter for many years. Went to school locally at William Howard in Brampton. I went to Carlisle College. I didn't go to university, and still had no clue after I left college what I wanted to do, and then kind of fell into a career which I really loved it. And I was thinking about our conversation today this morning actually, and where I started out. So I started out as a trainee sales negotiator in a estate agency, and it was an estate agent on the Crescent in Carlisle. And I loved it. It was absolutely brilliant because you were helping people to do something that was really exciting, buying the first house. And I can still remember the first house that I sold. It was the most rundown house in the middle of Curragh. It was some young first-time buyers, but I was so excited beyond belief. You would have thought it was a palace. So I sold my first house. What struck me about the whole thing and why I loved it was because you were really making a difference. And we know, everybody says about the biggest things that you ever go through in life is buying a house and things like that. And to be part of that, having no clue, at the time I was only 19, I think, so 19, 20. I had no clue about buying a house, about money or anything like that, but I was thrown into it. And there was a guy that worked there that was really good at helping people understand about mortgages and helping people to sort of plan about budgeting and what they can afford and talking through things, so that as a 19-year-old, I learned all about what a mortgage was. I understood it. So I had loads of confidence in him because he'd helped me understand it. So I kind of referred a lot of, all of the people that were coming through buying houses to him. He took me under his wing a little bit, and then all of a sudden he kind of left. And the estate agent said, Rachael, you've really taken a keen interest in this. We'd like to support you with it. Do you want to do some exams and learn and do mortgages? So that was my first kind of journey into finance. I then started on the roller coaster ride of taking exams. I'm not academic. If an exam takes a lot of study, I really have to study. I do retain it once I've studied for it, but I struggle at times to kind of get the language that the examiners want through written exams. So I don't find it easy. I got very, very stressed. You have to learn to deal with failing an exam as well, which, you know, all of those kind of things I think have built me as a person along the years. And to this day, I still have to take exams. You know, when Rishi comes on and tells us that he's changing something to do with pensions in the budget, it's head in the hands and you think, oh God, because that means
there's another exam.
we have to do another exam and we're going to have to learn so many other things. But the journey in itself that we've been on, I loved. I was a mortgage advisor for quite a lot of years. I bought my first house when I was 21. Interest rates were at about 7.5%. So interest rates were about 7.5%. And I did my own mortgage, as you would expect. I bought a terraced house. I bought it for £27,000. The lady who was selling the house left me loads of things in the house, a really old sofa, cups, plates, crockery and everything like that. And that was a lifesaver because I had no money to buy anything else.
Why did she leave you everything?
Well, it was a rental house.
Right,
so she'd left these kind of things in the house, and it was the most hideous sofa that you've ever seen. You know the really old conservatory furniture that's like the cane and things like that. So IKEA, buying the throws from IKEA and making it my home. And I remember the first night, and my sister helped me move in actually. And the first night that I moved in, I actually sat and cried because I was terrified. It's like, oh my God, what have I done? You know, there's me, all these bills. How the hell am I going to manage? I had a tiny little portable TV sat on an old table that again I've been given. I've managed to buy a bed with that, but gradually, you know, you build up from there, and I absolutely love that house. So my career started very much in mortgage advice, and I worked for an estate agency group for a number of years. Really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it because my job, as far as I could see, it was to help people buy the house of their dreams, but also to make sure they could afford it. And I used to say things like, you know, I want to make sure that you're not having to live on beans and toast. That if you want to go out at the weekend to the pub, if you want to go out for a meal, if you want to go on holiday, that you can, and to make it real. And, you know, sometimes people would say to me that, oh, well, you know, such and such a building society will let us borrow X amount. And I say, well, that's fine, you know, go to X building society and borrow that if you want. But based on what you've told me and based on the cost that it's going to be, you will be living on beans and toast. You know, and it was at a time when Northern Rock were lending, you know, 110 times what the 110% of what the house was costing, and that made me very, very nervous then. And that was way before the financial crisis. But working with people and doing that for a number of years, I kind of outgrew it. I wanted to do more. And thankfully, I had some really, really good bosses that I had so much respect for.
Do more in what sense? What was lacking, do you think, from that role?
It was kind of, I wanted to do more of the financial planning side. I wanted to understand more about investing and other things that people needed apart from a mortgage, and other kind of life events that would mean that you could continue to work with those people, not just when they were buying and selling a house. So I became very interested in the wider financial planning.
What sparked that, do you think? Do you think it was the conversations around, I don't want you to live on beans and toast, I want you to actually have a life?
Yeah, partly so, I think. And it was also, I had a really, really brilliant boss at the time that was very supportive, very encouraging. And I won loads of awards where I was working, and I was the top advisor for the company, and I think I kind of I found that quite difficult, because I was doing what I enjoyed doing, and I was doing well at it, because in my view I was doing it right, and I wasn't trying to hide anything from clients, and I wasn't doing it through rose-tinted glasses. And a lot of people did go somewhere else, but all of a sudden then I kind of wanted to keep in touch with those people for what happened. And the way that you do that is by learning more about the wider planning and things that people need throughout their lives, such as pensions. That's when it started interesting me, was with pensions, and my love of pensions has never gone away with that. But it was the boss that I had, and I think I was really, really fortunate with Paul. He was called. He gave me a lot of confidence in my own ability, and he then left, but he wanted me to go with him as to where I'd left, where he'd gone to. And I took a really big leap, massively outside of my comfort zone, an awful lot to learn, but it was the same kind of leap that I'd had initially going into the mortgage advisor role. And because I felt really confident with Paul was still going to be my boss, then I took that leap. It meant a lot more exams again.
Do you think you would have taken that leap if you hadn't had that mentor to guide you and say, look, you can do this and I want you to come with me? Do you think you would have worked up to that leap, or do you think you would have taken it out of your own steam?
I actually don't think I would have done, because I had very low self-confidence, even though I was doing very well. I mean, and you hear, we hear the term now, which looking back now, it's imposter syndrome. When you think that somebody's going to find out actually that I'm not that good and that I've won this award, but I'm not really quite sure why. And I'm just, all I'm doing is talking to people and so all of that. And I think, I always remember the biggest thing for Paul was probably he'd observed me through a client meeting, because it was always really important to me to do it properly and to do it very compliantly, to make sure that everybody's aware of everything that we go through. And the biggest compliment I ever got, and I still remember it from Paul, was basically saying to me that I was better than him. And when he was observing me with clients, he felt that I was better than what he was at doing the job, and that was a huge compliment for me. So I don't know. I would like to think that I would still have gone on a journey, but having somebody like him initially sort of helped with the hunger and the appetite and the drive to pass exams, even though I did fail, because I knew that somebody had confidence in me to do that and to tell me that it was okay to fail at that point with that. So before I knew it, I found myself in a position where, I'd passed the exams, and I was all of a sudden then taking a team of financial advisors that were mortgage advisors. I was the one observing them in the field. I was the one that was mentoring them, and I was the one who was trying to develop their skills. And I felt a bit like a duck, that you've got. I was paddling like buggery underneath, flapping like hell with the imposter syndrome all along, but still really enjoying being able to demonstrate how I knew it should be done. And I very much led by example. So I never asked somebody to do what I couldn't do myself, so because I was dealing with some people in the team. So it was a team of 10, and some people were twice my age.
I was going to ask, how old were you when you did that job?
So I will have been probably about 26. And some people had huge amounts of banking experience. So this was with kind of a premier department of one of the big banks. I was working with people who had significantly more experience than me, a very, very male-orientated business, which it still is, and I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem with that. I would love to see more women in the industry, but it is what it is. It's, but I suppose what I had to get over was earning their respect. And I'm always of the opinion that if somebody demands my respect, they don't get it. If they're in a position of authority and they think that means that I should respect them, it doesn't. For me, they have to earn my respect, and they have to be a decent person underneath that kind of shadow. So I wanted to demonstrate that I was worthy of their respect, but that they were also worthy of mine, because I could learn a lot from them. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I knew I could learn a huge amount from them. I didn't know an awful lot about banking. I'd kind of been thrown into this arena to do what I was good at, but I wanted to learn about what they were really good at. So it took a while, and it took quite a lot of hard work, stress, tears, to get to the stage where they listened and they kind of started take on board what I was trying to do. Yeah. And I'm not going to say it wasn't hard work, because it was, and the tears were very real at times, when I just thought, I can't do this. But I did, and I kept doing the exams behind the scenes. And in those days, it was a case of, I was working a 40-hour week. I was looking after people from Teesside up to Aberdeen, and studying was in my own time, whenever my own time was, so there wasn't a luxury of time off for studying or anything like that. It just had to be done. So a lot of the time it was room service in the hotel, studying on the night, as well as prepping for what I was doing with clients the next day. But what that role actually led to was a huge pivotal change in my career. So I was promoted, and I became an area manager, which again was a huge responsibility. And in my mind, I had an objective of, I was going to be a managing director by the time I was 40. So by this time I was probably in my kind of late 30s. I was going to be a managing director. And I was putting so much stress on myself. I felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall, trying to get people to do something that actually I loved doing. When I was with a client, or when I was observing a client meeting, which if you ask Abigail now, Abigail will tell you that I still do the same. I found myself taking over the meeting, because I loved being part of that journey with the client, to talk to them about everything, and to understand and to hear and to learn all about them. And I could do it so much better than any of the guys that I was trying to teach to do it.
Yeah, that must be really, really hard, when you say that you're trying to earn people's respect and show that you're worthy of their respect, and you want them to, respect you, but you don't want to jump in and be like, oh, I can do this better than you, even though you're probably sitting there going, oh my God, I can do this so much better than you.
It wasn't the case of sitting there thinking I can do this so much better than you. It's the case of the words were in my mouth that I really wanted them to say, but they didn't say it.
Yeah.
And as anybody knows me, once as is evident now, Eve, that once you kind of get me talking on this, something that I'm really passionate about, I can really talk about it forever. But the point was, I didn't recognize that that was something that I loved doing. I was trying to force myself into something that I wasn't. And the bit that I hated about management was the tick box exercise that you were forced to do. The targets, if people weren't achieving this, or if they weren't achieving that, or if they didn't tick this box, if they didn't tick that box, writing out plans and doing all of the compliance admin behind the scenes. That was the bit that was absolutely killing me. And in the end, it made me really ill, to the extent of I actually had a bit of a breakdown, and I can picture it now. I was in the house that I'm in now, and there was another lady that had come to kind of do some work with me around the whole compliance area for things like that. And I just lost it. I broke down, and I just couldn't see a way out. And to cut a very long story short with that, I'd absolutely burnt myself out trying to meet that I'm going to be a director by the time I'm 40. I've got these people that I'm going to be letting down, and all of this team that were relying on me to support them, and I had all of these targets that I needed to achieve. I was working ridiculous hours, traveling ridiculous amounts, as I say, literally from Newcastle to Aberdeen, working all weekend to prepare for the following week. And looking back now, it was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, and the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'm conscious that I'm kind of sharing some kind of really, really personal part of my story. But the reason I'm sharing it, I think, is because it was a pivotal part of my story. And the best thing that I did was I started work with a psychologist, a lady called Jane, who I still speak to now. And she just kind of said to me, she's Scottish, she's very direct, very blunt.
I think most of them are, aren't they?
Yeah, she was, but it was what I needed. But she helped me to understand that I'd done nothing wrong. I was absolutely burnt out. The first thing I needed to do was rest. And the first thing I needed to do was to kind of be gentle to myself, and be kind to myself. And at the time, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. I was off work. And that's when I kind of, the qualification that I was doing changed massively. So all of a sudden, I was taking a qualification in understanding my own brain and understanding why I was the way, and what was happening and what was going on, and that it was okay that I wasn't going to be a director by the time I was 40, because actually that wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I was very lucky with work. They were really good with me. And the hardest thing that I did from that was turn around and say, this isn't me. This job isn't me. But I was then also very lucky that they recognized that the job that I wanted to do, I was actually really good at. And the bank at the time, but again, the boss that I had at the time, who was different, it was different to Paula, who was originally, they kind of created a role for me. It was quite difficult because I became part of the team that I'd managed, and somebody else came in to manage me as part of that team.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that I had to deal with, but again, I dealt with it from a psychology perspective. And all of a sudden I was going to do back what I dreamed of doing when I was a mortgage advisor, that I was part of a much bigger part of that client's journey. I'd grown, I'd learned so much throughout that, but I almost felt comfortable the fact that it was okay that I wasn't going to be a director by the time I was 40.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. It's so important, I think, to recognize that, because the amount of times people talk about being, promoted within the team and then having to manage your peers, that's really hard. And also being brought in as someone younger and trying to manage a team of older people with more experience is really hard. There's not many people talk about, do you know what? I tried it and I hated it. So I took a step back down, because there's this sort of strange perception that if you take a step back down, you failed. Actually, you haven't. It's totally okay to hate managing people. It's just not for everybody. And I agree that the processes and the tick box exercise in the background is a total pain in the arse. But if you love people and you love managing people, it's something that you stick with. But how did you deal with that being managed again?
I mean, the girls where I am now, one of the things I often say, and I say it to clients as well, is that now running my own business, I'm totally unemployable.
I don't think that's uncommon with business owners, actually.
How did I manage it? I think I still had the team's respect, and they knew that how hard I tried and how hard I worked. And all of a sudden, I found myself being quite, vulnerable with the people who were probably the most challenging when I'd started trying to manage them. So there was a couple of guys in the team that were the ones who were double my age, who then kind of took me under their wing a little bit. Being managed never worried me or bothered me. Being observed with a client never worried me or bothered me at all, because I'm quite happy for somebody to see what I do, because I do it right, and the journey that I go through with a client. So that bit didn't kind of worry me. The bit that I struggle with is if somebody doesn't let me do my job. And in the big banking world, what then changed over the few years from there was you were less and less able to do the job that you were supposed to be doing with clients. And it just everything became a box that you had to fill in. And clients don't fit boxes. These were, any clients don't fit boxes, but these were clients that were high net worth, what we'll call private banking clients. And why I did so well at it was because I found a solution to them. It wasn't a case of going and saying, this is what we've got, and trying to fit a square solution into a round hole that didn't fit. So I would kind of get to know the clients, take that scenario and build something around them, if that makes sense. But yeah, the more that it went on, and again, this is where I started to also gain a lot of legal knowledge, because I worked with some brilliant solicitors at the time, and I built relationships with solicitors, and actually with a big firm in Newcastle that also took me under their wing. And at the time they were called Dickinson Dees, which I think is now Womble Bond Dickinson. But there was a few of the partners there that I got to know because of working with the clients. And all of a sudden we had this collaborative relationship with financial planning, the legal side of things. And I worked so much with them and with these partners that they ended up I had my own little office within their building that we would work together with mutual clients. And very much from that, I got a real hunger for understanding a lot more about why the legal side, why things like wills and trusts and tax and everything like that was so important to the client journey, and why I needed to make sure that it was part of my journey with clients. So I still had a real appetite for knowledge from that, and it worked very, very well. And actually through those relationships, it led to my next career journey, which brought me back to Cumbria, because at this point, even though I was going back to doing what I love doing, I was still looking after high net worth clients from Newcastle to Aberdeen. I was still away from home an awful lot. I was still working a lot of hours. I was very much aware a lot more about what I could how much I could manage and where were the levels where I knew I needed to kind of foot off the throttle a little bit.
Did you find that once you had that spell in your life where you were like, I was totally burnt out and I couldn't do any more, from that point on, were you better at putting, boundaries in and saying, this is when I've had enough and I can't do any more? Or do you still find yourself edging over that and just adding a little bit more and it'll be fine, I can do 5 more minutes or half an hour more or whatever?
I think I've only probably just got to that stage now. So we're, probably 20 years later, because I always push myself. And I think, and still, even now, there was something that happened recently, whereas, I ended up where I was like, oh God, I had to take a step back and to sit down. And when I look back, it was like, yeah, the signs were there. I knew I should have kind of just rested a little bit, and I didn't. So I think.
But when you're absolutely driven by passion, as you can tell you are, you don't want to be like, oh, I need to sit down. You're like, no, I want to be involved. I want to do that. Let's go. It's enthusiasm is infectious.
And fear of missing out as well.
A bit of FOMO.
I was a lot more. I was learning all the time, and I still worked with Jane, the psychologist, for quite a long time with that. And I ended up, I actually went back to her a few years ago, and I work on a proactive basis. I mean, I think, and probably the best thing I would say from this podcast is, I think everybody should have a psychologist. In America, it's like, I don't think it's not the done thing unless you've got a therapist or I think they psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever you want to call it. It's the best thing that I've ever done for any exam. But having somebody to help me, when you're in a place of your head is just full of all sorts of everything to do with work, you've got this person that has got a degree in knowing how to take you back out of that place and look at it from a different angle. And so it's not rocket science, because you sit there and you go, oh yeah, I did do that, or I did do that. And we all do it. But Jane has helped me to be a lot more comfortable with who I am, why I am the way I am, and how I've got there. And yeah, I will say, periods of trauma that we all experience in our lives, and they make us the people that we are. And I think that should be celebrated. It's like you were saying before about, I accepted wholeheartedly that I'm not a manager and that's not my forte. But that means to me that to complement what I do, I need to work with a manager that is good at that bit so that it works. And I think that's what we've built within the business that we've got now, and celebrating what people are good at, because it's different. So our team now, we're all really good at different things. We're all very different people, but together it builds the whole picture of what we bring to clients. I've lost my train of thought now. I can't remember what I'm
That's fine.
So it brought me, but what the relationships that I was building outside of the bank that I was with at the time led to me being approached about a job locally. So the same kind of job.
Locally in Cumbria.
So I still lived in Carlisle, and so it meant that I was going to be able to look after Cumbria as a whole. It did mean more exams, but I just thought,
someone who hates exams, you take a lot of exams.
I know. But by this time, what I did know was that I did need to really plan the study time. And I did need to really do that. And that, do you know what? If I didn't pass it the first time, it was a real learning experience to know what to expect from the exam.
Yes.
Because, I do believe that university wouldn't have been for me, even if I was, because to be honest, I was more interested in going to the pub at that time and having fun with my friends than I was about studying. So for me, university wouldn't have been right, but I feel that I have learned from a school of experience, and training and learning from people.
But being very non-academic, where did that thirst for knowledge come from? Because you can tell through your career, you've always gone and, you've been to seek out more information, more knowledge, more stuff to help you grow and develop. Where did that come from if you're not academic?
I always had the opinion that if I could explain something to my clients in a way that I understand it, then that made total sense. So I needed to study something and study something and study something in different formats. So at the time, we didn't have, well, we did have computers. I'm not that old, but we did, but a lot of it was still learning by books or audio. Or by going on courses. So I found that it takes a combination of different learning styles for the penny to drop. And I do learn really well by being able to ask somebody something. So I'm quite a visual person. So if I combined going on a course with reading a book and then listening to something along the way, I would find that something would drop me, go, I've got it. I've totally got it. And it might be one person explaining something in 3 different ways, but one of the ways they explained it, I got it. And it was because I wanted to, I just had to understand the way that it all worked in a way that I could link to a client's life. So showing me a graph or showing me a pie chart or algebra, which I still get panic attacks about algebra now. Some of the symbols that you have to do on a scientific calculator, I used to refer to them as the top hat or something like that. Those numbers on a screen, sent me into a
sweat.
Just state. Yeah. Yes. It was like, oh my God. But I broke that calculation down into a story that was going to end up with a result that was going to make a difference to what my clients needed to do. Then I understood it. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. So interestingly enough, I'm exactly the same with numbers. And being a commercial manager, there's a little bit iffy if you're like that with numbers. But if you turn it into money and you turn it into a story and you put it on the back of the activity that you're doing and actually what impact that has, it makes total sense.
Yeah.
So yes, I do totally understand where you're coming from.
So it was very much for me to understand something. I need to understand the practical sense of what it's going to do. What does that mean? What's it mean to me as a person? Forget
the actual application of it.
Yeah. Forget the graph, forget the chart. So if we talk about, now I'm extremely confident and I'm extremely well versed to be able to stand up and talk to anybody about the financial markets and to be able to talk through any graph. And to be able to put it in a format in a way that anybody understands. And we have clients who, some of our clients really do want the technical detail. They really do want the graph, the pie chart, the percentages, what it means to them on a grand scale. And I can do that. And I enjoy doing it because it keeps my knowledge up to date. As well, and it means that I'm always trying to look at what's happening in the markets and going on. But I've also got clients who find it really intimidating as well. So a lot of clients couldn't think of anything worse because they think if I show them a graph, it means that I think they should understand it, and we don't. Because it's our job to bring it to life. And I always, again, go back to me in that the way that I learned was it had to be brought to life to me. So I try and bring it to life for that person as well. And that's how my brain works with that. So, so going back to where I was in the career, and I've just realized you've only asked me one question.
That's all right. I'm having a great time just listening.
Going back to where I was, so I was working locally. I was covering Cumbria. I didn't work in a branch. I went out to see clients at their home or at their place of work, and loved that, because it was a real privilege, and still is a real privilege with what we do, to be invited into somebody's home and to understand their story and their journey. And I loved it. Then the financial crisis hit in 2008-9. The world was turned upside down, and it was a really kind of difficult place, but it was actually a real privilege to help people through it as well, and to strip away from the media hype and what was going on. And yes, the internet was there, but it wasn't what it is now for that. But gradually, as time went on, it was made a lot more difficult with the bank. We were target driven, we were numbers driven. We had to see so many clients in a day. We had to tick X amount of boxes. If we didn't, we were put on a development plan that potentially would mean you'd have disciplinary, and and right to the extent of actually you were bullied. In some instances. And it's the only time in my career where I've had some managers at the time that I did feel they did make me feel inferior because of I was a woman, and they did make me feel inferior because I did kind of struggle with anxiety and mental health at the time, and it was still at a time where it wasn't really talked about very much. But the bosses that I had at the time were very much of the opinion that, do you know what, if you're struggling, just give yourself a kick up the ass, just get on with it. You give yourself a kick up the backside, and if you don't hit this, do you know what, you're going to lose your job, because that's where we are.
Yeah, that's not always the best way to motivate people, though, is it?
No, it's not. But fundamentally, why I was becoming challenged from a mental health perspective was because I disagreed with so much that the bank was doing. It meant that I wasn't allowed to look after my clients how they should be looked after. And again, bearing in mind that I was dealing with high net worth private clients, I was banging my head against a brick wall, trying to go to the leaders of the business to say, this is wrong, you've got this wrong, it's a short-term vision. I was getting nowhere, because the reality was they didn't care, but I was determined and they didn't care.
So how did you feel that the customers needed to be looked after, that the bank wasn't letting you do?
They needed to be, they needed time spent with them. Sometimes it wasn't about the short-term commercial value. They needed time spent with them to help get things in order, and to help give guidance as to what the next step was. But there wasn't necessarily going to be anything commercial in it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see, so with business owners, as a prime example, that it might be a long way down the line before that business was able to look at investing any money. But with my guidance and my support, if I was there as part of that journey, they would come to me eventually. But the bank wanted it now. What they also wanted to do was charge fees for things that so bank, if we were already managing money for a client, it's my job to service that and to look after that and to make sure that it was still meeting the needs all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And the bank wanted me to go in and charge for doing that every year, even though they were still getting paid for looking after the money in the first instance.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. And we did clash, and it did end up making me really quite ill, to an extent of it led to, would it say the best thing that's ever happened to me? Yes, probably, in the fact that it did lead to me actually starting my own business. If you'd ask me, has it the best thing because that ever happened to me? No, because prior to almost 8 years ago now, everything that I'd been through and everything that I experienced gave me the experience and the confidence to decide that I wanted to do it for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And without going through the crap, I wouldn't have got to that stage. So I needed to have gone through that whole journey. And it's only because I learned so much about myself, and going back to the psychologist with Jane, that I could sit and be in that position and think, right, that and the fact that my husband told me that he would still love me if we went bankrupt. And it was just a house. So off we went. But yeah, basically then I started Rachael Bell Wealth Management.
So do you think it was that push where you knew something fundamentally in that business just wasn't aligned with your core values and it was making you really unhappy?
Yeah.
What was the push? Do you remember the day when you just said, I can't do this anymore? Or was it a gradual build-up?
Yes, it was a gradual build-up, and I would say a gradual build-up probably over an 18-month period, because some of my peers had taken a leap before me and said kind of enough is enough, and that kind of did help to give me the confidence. But what I also did was, some of my clients who by this time I'd worked with them for a good few years, who were business leaders in their own right, and I had a huge amount of admiration and respect for what they'd achieved themselves. I went and asked what they thought, and I wanted, for a change, I was kind of putting myself to them and saying, can I come and have a chat with you about something that I'm thinking about doing, and to get your thoughts and input, and actually some lessons that you've had throughout your career. I mean, totally nothing to their careers were nothing to do with financial advice, but they'd been business owners, and that was something that I never done before. So I wanted to talk to people who had.
What were some of the best lessons that you were told?
Not to be frightened about getting it right, and actually to get support and advice from people who are good at what they do, but what you're not good at. So that is still key to this day, and actually that's helped us build the team that we've got now, because we are all good at different things. So when it comes to not having a clue as to how to set up my own business, right to the extent of, oh my God, what do I do with a tax man? I didn't even want to think about going there. So I knew, and it was actually the Growth Hub that I went to, and I went to speak to an accountant who, I think it's 12 hours that you kind of got the support with. And
so you get 12 hours support through the Growth Hub of an advisor of any type that you need. So you picked an accountant to go and speak to.
Yeah, because I was like, oh my God, what if I've left now and I'm starting up on my own, but I haven't told anybody. Who do I need to tell? Well, how do I pay myself? What on earth happens? I didn't have a clue. But I was a pension specialist, so there's a certain part of you that thinks, well, I should know that. But that's going back to my clients expecting me to know what's on the graph. So it was about accepting that, no, I needed an accountant to do that bit. And it was Tony, and it was really nice. It was really good with me. So I breathed and thought, right, okay, I've done things properly. I've set things up. I've let the tax man know what he needs to know. Now I've got no money coming in. Oh my God. So I knew I was okay. I had some a buffer. I had some savings that I knew I was going to be able to pay myself what we needed from a bills perspective until things kind of got up and running. And I also had, the company that I was becoming associated with. So, I am a partner with St James's Place Wealth Management. You have to be invited to become a partner. And the support that I was getting from them for helping to grow and establish my business was far more than I'd ever had throughout the whole of my career. With the exception of actually going back to Paul. I
was going to say, even with Paul, it sounded like he was amazing.
Yeah, he's still on LinkedIn, and I would still be, delighted to see him. But the support that I get from St James's Place, because there's over 1,500 employees of St James's Place that their job is to support me. Because without me as a partner, there is no St James's Place, which ultimately means there is no 150+ billion of funds under management. So we're the first line clients, and it's important to, they need to help me succeed. So there was a lot of guidance there as well. So with that, and with the accountant, and with a lot of really well-established relationships that I had within the local community that had worked really hard to do. And there was actually quite a lot of clients that wanted to support me and wanted to come with me with that. So so that was the start of Rachael Bell Wealth Management.
It's amazing how many, I've done quite a few of these podcasts now, and speaking to business owners and entrepreneurs, it's that misconception that as a business owner or someone starting a business, you should know everything about business. And you absolutely shouldn't, because I don't think I've ever spoken to anyone who started a business who has said, well, I knew everything about business, so I just thought I'd start a business. They all said, I had this idea and I really, really wanted to do this, so I just decided to go and do it. And you can learn along the way. Like you said, don't be afraid of failing the exam.
No, but don't be frightened to ask, and I think that's probably one of the best things that I still do now. And it's actually helped me to get to know a lot more of the local business community, because if I saw somebody that I thought, bloody hell, you've done really well with that, and what a fantastic idea, and how have you achieved that, and how have you achieved that, I'm genuinely really interested, but I'm also interested as to what I can learn from it. So even with a client that I'm working with that is a business owner, again, it is a privilege, because I get to learn things about industries that I would never ever be able to understand. I mean, the extremes that I've had is somebody that had a business that was helping to clear landmines, right through to somebody who was explaining to me about how sound waves move through water for deep sea drilling for oil, and all of these things that you get to learn about
that you would just never ever think about ever.
Never ever think about. But they were also able to teach me something about business, or I would ask the questions, so what's the biggest lesson that you've learned? Or how did you go about that? Or how did you go about it? And I've never had anybody that said to me, well, I'm not going to tell you that, or I don't want to tell you that, or I don't want anybody I've ever asked for advice as a business owner has always been really happy to talk to me about it. And at the same time, it's helped me to learn so much about the amazing businesses that we've got right on our doorstep. Would never ever know about. So again, from an advice perspective, don't ever be scared to ask for advice or expect to know. Why would you know something about running a business if you've never done it before, or you've never been taught it before? And I'm, with the best will in the world, you can read a book, but unless you've actually experienced it, it's not the same thing.
Did you find that when you had those clients that you were giving advice to on your specialism and your love of pensions and financial planning, and then you were asking them about their business and their expertise, has that strengthened your relationships? Did you ever feel really vulnerable, or, oh God, if I ask this question, I might look really stupid and they might think I'm an idiot and think, oh God, why is this woman managing my finances? Or did you find that actually it made your relationship stronger?
The imposter syndrome would be that, oh my God, I can't ask this because it would. But then I think as I've grown to be really comfortable with who I am and how I kind of go about getting to know a client, asking those questions helps me shape the strategy that I'm going to help build for them. So any plan that we build for a client is as good as what they share with us. So by really drilling down and asking the questions to understand more about the business, you see people being lit up by what they're passionate about, or people will talk about what really worries them. And unless I ask those questions, I'm not going to get to know the person, which means that I could put the best plan in front of them, but it's not necessarily going to fit that person.
So it's not going to be the best plan for them.
And sometimes, and the girls will laugh at me now, and I'll kind of say, oh my God, I sounded like a total muppet when I've said something, or I've asked a question, or and often we do have a laugh because I don't always get the words out right. and we do have a laugh, but I'm quite comfortable in showing my own vulnerability, and I'm quite comfortable at not pretending that I know something. If I don't, I'll ask the question. And sometimes I might be the only one that stands up and goes, I haven't a clue what you've just said. Can you just talk through that again? And
there'll always be someone else who is thinking that, who is not brave enough to say it.
Yeah. Well, I am that one that will just say, I have not got a clue.
Good.
Can you just talk me through that? Yeah.
Well, every room needs one of those. So talk me through Rachael Bell Wealth Management. So you started on that first day, you went and saw the accountant, you did it all right. Now you've got a team of 4, is it 4 or 5 that you've got?
Yeah, got a team of 4.
How did you get from that to where you are now?
Okay. Pam. So my Pam, who is now Director of Client Experience, or Client Experience Director, whichever way you want to it. Pam and I had worked together doing what we love doing at the bank. Pam's forte was very much day-to-day banking, cash management, relationship management, and looking after clients. Pam had been through a very, very similar experience with me with the bank, which ultimately led to her being made redundant. But we worked well together. So you could say it was a bit of a comedy duo when we were working with clients. I'm looking at her across the room now, because we would kind of build a plan together for a client and work with them, and we just clicked. So I knew that I needed somebody that was going to help me to carry on building the business, that was going to help me with the administration side of things, that was going to help me to be organized, because of that, again, that was something that I knew was not my forte, and I knew I couldn't do it on myself. But the risk of, oh my God, thinking about having to pay somebody else to come in and help you with that was quite hard. So I got in touch with Pam and just said, fancy having a cuppa, and I've got something that I would quite like to ask you. So Pam was working, self-employed. She'd got a job. She'd been out of the bank for a little while, and Pam agreed to kind of just come and work with me part-time, because at that time I was like, I actually don't know how much I'm going to need you. I don't know what I'm going to need you for, and don't ask me for a job description because I don't know what that looks like. But I'm just asking you to kind of come on this exciting journey with me. And because we knew each other well anyway, and we knew what we wanted to, I think Pam understood where I was wanting to go with it and what I was wanting to deliver for clients. So Pam came on board, and it was very much a case of, she told me how many hours she'd worked, and then I paid Pam for the hours that she'd worked. And we winged it to a certain extent. We kind of found our way. We found our way for things that we didn't know. We weren't shy when we would just ring up and we would just do that. I'm really new to this. Can you help me? Can you talk it through with me like a beginner?
There's something endearing about that, though, isn't there? When you're like, can you just help me? Because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And we still try and get away with doing that now. If it's something new that we're doing, we'll go, we haven't done this before. So just to let you know, can you just kind of start from the beginning? Yeah. As it were, with that. But that's kind of, I think that's actually helped us to build relationships with people inside and outside of St James's Place by being a bit vulnerable, and kind of just saying, we haven't a clue. Can you help us? And then a year after that, again, I worked with, and I was lucky to have a PA in my former role at the bank. And she was great. We'd kind of grown together over a couple of years, and Gemma worked with me in the role, and Pam and I knew that the business was growing. I always like to be delivering the service that we're delivering to clients, but knowing well ahead of when we needed somebody else, so that they would be up and running by the time, to make sure we could still deliver what we said we were going to do.
Yeah.
So we knew that we were going to need somebody else. We knew that we wanted Gemma. So again, I got in touch with Gemma and asked Gemma to meet me for a coffee. And I can still remember to this day, we went, it was Barton's Yard, Holston, Barton's Yard. It was absolutely chucking it down.
As it does in Cumbria quite often.
Chucking it down. And Gemma was coming to meet me for a coffee. And again, I was quite, well, Gemma could probably kind of tell a story about what she remembers. I was quite, cards on the table. We're a young business. We're finding our way. We don't know what exactly it looks like. This is what we think we're going to need you for. This is what we are looking for. What do you think? And I wasn't sure what Gemma was going to say, because having the security of a big bank being your employer, well, it's security. And I was asking somebody to step away from that security to come to a young business. Didn't have a job description. I just knew that we would work well together from that perspective. And Gemma said, yeah, I'm quite happy to come on that journey, but I need to have my appendix out before I do that. No, gallbladder. It was gallbladder, not appendix.
Gallbladder out.
Gallbladder. And then kind of recovery and all the rest of it. And then, Gemma came into the team. And around about the same time, as Abigail will tell you now, that she now feels that she's been interviewed her whole life. So my goddaughter, Abigail.
I've heard that story, yes.
Yeah. She is very academic. She's a very clever girl. And she's got a really kind of lively personality. She loves chatting to people. And she was away at university in Edinburgh, studying something totally unrelated. I don't think you get any further removed from finance. It was textiles. And I knew, because I went to school with her mum, so I knew that she was missing the academic side as well, and I knew that it wasn't something that she was massively enjoying. I knew it was really hard for her, and she was working her socks off. So I went up and met Abigail in Edinburgh and just kind of said, do you fancy maybe thinking about being a financial advisor? I can't remember exactly what the response now was, but I gave her quite a lot of homework to do, to kind of look into anything about money, about finance, because this was a young 19-year-old girl, again, similar to how I was when I started out, didn't have a clue. Why would you have a clue?
They don't teach about it in school.
We do.
You do.
We do. But it's, yes, no, they don't. It's not on the curriculum. It's not measured by Ofsted. It doesn't tick a box. So it doesn't get a school the accolade that they need, to get the points for money. But that's a whole different podcast.
It's a whole different conversation.
A whole different podcast. And Abigail came back to me with the homework. She'd done all the homework. And at this point, I wasn't asking for commitment. I was just basically asking, was this a journey that she wanted to kind of have a think about? And the answer was yes, it was. So I already knew that by the time that Abigail finished university, that we would then be kind of looking to start to build, the business would be growing so that it was more than and bigger than me. So in my mind at this point, I did have a long-term view, and I also had a long-term view with clients, so everything that I challenged against the bank, I did have a long-term view. We did spend time with people. It wasn't commercial at the time, we knew we were doing the right thing, and we knew if we carried on doing the right things, it would happen.
Mm-hmm.
Was that scary at some times? Because I was responsible for bringing money in, not only to pay me, but to pay the girls first and to pay the bills. And, you know, we needed to have the balance of bringing money in, but actually still working with clients and not expecting any money to come in for it. So balancing all that, to know with balancing that I could still deliver what we'd said we were going to deliver, ongoing.
Yeah. And in those moments of fear, when you say it wasn't commercial right now, was your commitment to your vision totally unwavering? Or did you ever have moments where you thought, oh, I'm not sure if I'm doing this right?
Oh, I still have moments where I was thinking, I'm not sure I'm doing this right. But my vision of what is right and my opinion and ethics, I suppose you can say, is actually why is our why. So our why is that we make a difference to people's lives through financial planning. And as a team, we will guide, we will work with people. And sometimes all they need is a bit of guidance from us. That means that we don't earn anything from it. And that's fine, you know, because one, if we are helping people, especially in today, you know, if we're helping people to learn how to budget, how to manage money, that means that they are going to be able to manage through any struggles, because at the moment, and more than ever, people haven't been taught the very basics of how do you manage, what are the costs of running a household. You know, there's all of this want everything now kind of pressure, the Instagram world, but you've never thought about how you're going to manage to afford it and to do it and pay for your bills and to do that. So a big part of what we do is that I want to stop people from having to have everything on Klarna or everything, as it was at the time, payday loans that were charging 2,000%, you know, good debt, bad debt, and everything like that. I kind of see that as something that's really important for us to support people with. And that's never going to earn us money. But from a commercial perspective, they'll tell somebody else who will think, actually, that's a really nice thing that business has done. And that person will potentially be sat in front of us where it is going to earn us money.
Yeah. And those clients, I suppose, that you help, once you've taught them how to plan and manage their money, they may actually end up with something that they'll bring back to you and say, can you help me with this?
Yeah. And on the podcast that we're starting to do now, are very, very, very educational, informative, to try and get that out to a bigger audience and helping them with. And the question of, what do you wish you'd been taught in school about money? And I can't even begin to say how passionate I am about that. And it forms a key part of Rachael Bell Wealth Management for the whole team. You know, so we deliver financial well-being workshops. We don't charge for them. People's perception of you need to have a lot of money to speak to us, that's wrong. You know, so working with young professionals or working with somebody that's got an idea, that we're not going to be saying to you, oh, you need to be able to invest money with us before we'll help you. No, because if you're investing money in an idea that you've got an idea, and that's what you're passionate about. If I was to tell you that you need to spend X amount of money on your pension to save tax when you haven't earned anything to pay tax in the first instance, that's a total turn off.
Waste of time. Yeah.
You know, so helping people understand how financial planning can make a difference to their lives without showing them one graph really is what we're about. And that is very often about being on a long journey with a client, and at some point that journey will mean that we earn money from it.
And another great example of that, we had a young lady who came on a dream placement who was 18, and Abigail very kindly spent some time with her, and that young lady's dream was to retire in Italy with a lemon farm. And I know that after she got off the call with Abigail, she was waxing lyrical about all of the things she was going to do, and she had a plan, and she knew exactly what she needed to do and how much she can save when she started work, and she was so excited. And
that was amazing to see that in a young lady who had a great end goal, but actually someone saying to her, no, it is possible. That is actually possible. It's not a pipe dream, was amazing. And I wish I'd actually videoed it and said to Abigail, look how excited she is. So that was amazing. And I think that it's so important to be able to do that.
But how many people would think that financial planning is that? You know, and this is why, you know, with one of the things that we're talking about, people's perception is so different from although, as again, we always say to all of our clients, we are not normal financial advisors. You know, I'm not normal. The word normal is overrated. And as I said before, I've come to the conclusion that I'm totally unemployable. But that's because we're not scared of actually not being normal. And we want to bring people's dreams to life. Are they going to necessarily achieve it all at the same time? Are there going to be curveballs? Absolutely. Are there going to be things that happen that potentially derail? But by having us as part of a team, we will hopefully help through that derailment and be able to guide and also help our businesses workforces. So what we do now with the financial wellbeing workshops is part of our corporate social responsibility. Financial wellbeing workshops that we deliver on age demographics, you know, because what somebody in the 20s gets excited about, they want to understand why you pay national insurance, why you pay tax, how to save, how to budget. They're saving towards a deposit for house prices that are ever increasing, compared to somebody that's in the 50s that's starting to think about, oh shit, I maybe need to think about something to do with my pension. So the workshops we deliver are real, based on life stages and age demographics. We can only deliver them for our clients who are business owners, because we don't charge for them. And we're the best in the world. We do still need to pay everybody's wages. So we can only do so much. But it's still a fundamental part of us. And we'll always build on that. We'll always do it. But we do it as a team.
So if you had to distill your business ethos down into one phrase, what would it be?
To make a difference to people's lives through financial planning.
And I think that's been through your whole career, really, hasn't it? Right from the start of the mortgage advice.
Yeah.
What are the 3 non-negotiable behaviours of the people that work with you?
Do what you say you're going to do. Don't expect to be able to do everything yourself. And ask for help.
In your opinion, what is your superpower?
Emotional intelligence. You know, so I can look at somebody as I'm talking to them and know whether or not I've achieved what I wanted to achieve by what I said, or if they've totally glazed over. You know, if I am getting overexcited about pensions or something like that, and they've totally glazed over and lost the will to live, or, you know, just being able to understand body language and emotional intelligence, to talk to people, and to actually, we often get to know more about a person than anybody in their family. And that's huge. And that's just through talking to them.
So what is the most common misconception of you, and what would you say to set it straight?
A misconception of me, or misconception of what I do?
Either or.
Okay. The most common, it's actually the title of one of the podcasts that we've just sent you to listen to, which is the important paperwork drawer, and the perception that people think they should be organised before they see us, or cleaning up before the cleaner comes, whatever you want to call it. You know, so everybody has an important paperwork drawer where they're keeping paperwork. They're not quite sure what it means. It's in a filing cabinet, or it's in a drawer, or if you're computer literate, it's all scanned and it's held in a computer file. Either way, you're keeping it, but you're not quite sure what it means. You just know it's important. And one of the stumbling blocks between people kind of having a first chat with us is that they think they need to organise all that paperwork and understand it and have their life sorted before they speak to us. No, that's our job. And even more so when you're a business owner, because your business is your pension. You're doing it because it's something you're really passionate about and you know what you're good at. You think that you should be good at the other bits. So you don't want to show anybody that you're not, when actually your business and personal planning all merges into one massively. It's our job to get to know both and to get to know what's important to you and to build a strategy that will work with you. So you don't need to be organised. You don't need to have money. But we will hopefully help you to get money and to end up with your lemon farm in Italy. Or even, you know, I mean, it's like my retirement plan. We joke with Abigail. It's not a joke really, because we know that it will be true, that she'll be kicking me out of the office when I'm 70. I love what I do. I haven't got a set retirement plan. I would quite like to have the option of working less when I'm older. But at the minute, I'm going to be around for the foreseeable because I'm really happy doing what I'm doing. That doesn't mean to doesn't mean to say I don't want to have all my ducks in a row, to know that if ever that changes, that I've got a plan.
Yeah.
But how would I have a plan if I haven't engaged with somebody that's going to help me have a plan?
Very good point. What would you tell your teenage self?
Oh God, that's a really, what would I tell my teenage self? Go for it. And don't worry about not being academic, because, you know, I am now a pension specialist that's one of, I think, 1,100 in the UK now, and it's taken me a lot of years to get there, but just go for it.
If there was a movie to be made about your life, what would it be called, and which actor would play you?
Oh my God.
Love that question.
Yeah, that's really hard. Movie. It'd have to be something that had a comedy element to it. Somebody like Dawn French to play me. Yeah, she's got a real ability to kind of laugh at herself and not on screen, to not get everything right and get her words mixed up, which I'm really good at.
Yeah.
Since I've been getting into the menopause, but that's a totally different podcast as well. But what would it be called? Yeah, A Life of Winging It.
A Life of Winging It with Dawn French. That would be an awesome film. I'd watch that.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right, we've got a selection of quick fire questions, and it is literally this or that.
Okay.
Phone call or text message?
Phone call.
Email or meeting?
Meeting.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Beach holiday or skiing holiday?
Beach.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Finally, does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
Ooh, you're the first no. Very first no. Everyone else has said yes.
No.
And to finish off, every guest leaves a question for the next guest. So I will get one of you before we finish. So the question that's been left for you is, what's your biggest business regret or learning?
My biggest business regret or learning? I don't think I've got any business regrets. My biggest learns, oh God, I'm trying to think of one. But I think my biggest learn is actually to be self-reliant on us, and to recognize that we actually are very special at what we do, and to not to undermine ourselves. which is imposter syndrome, isn't it? Which I think we will always fight with. But my biggest learn is to really truly believe and to know that what we deliver, nobody else does. And they can't do it like we do it because they're not us.
Yeah. Rachel, that was absolutely amazing. If anyone wants to get in touch with you after they've listened to this podcast and talk to you about financial planning or pensions, how do they do that?
Our website is Rachael Bell Wealth Management. Rachel spelled Rachael, Bell Wealth Management. My landline number is 01228 526 976. Mobile 07557 450 504, or email Rachael .bell@sjpp.co.uk. But if you Google us, then you'll see we'll pop up smiling faces, hopefully, and that. Or come along to the Directors Club.
Yes, absolutely. Come along to one of the Directors Club events,
which is fantastic, and again, so brilliant to be a sponsor, because we're going to be learning so much and already have about even more amazing businesses that we've got right here in Cumbria.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Rachel. And again, thank you for sponsoring the Directors Club. It's amazing to have you involved. And thank you so much for sharing your story.